Hello and welcome to a CX Moment. I'm Sarah Reed from Zendesk, and in these candid conversations, we chat with leaders about what's happening with their business, their support centers, and with their customer experience. We love taking questions during a CX Moment, so please go ahead and drop them into the Q&A. And if you like what we're chatting about today, please share it on social using hashtag CX Moment. Today, we're talking with Mary Gleick Matthews and Drew Nelson from the city of St. Paul. So let's go ahead and say hello to Drew and Mary. Hello to the both of you.
Hello.
Hey, folks.
And based on how you're dressed today, Drew, I'm going to guess that you are actually in the city of St. Paul.
Very much so. We're born with chainsaws in our hands here.
Well, do me a favor, please, and give us some fast facts about the city of St. Paul. Population, landmass, density. What makes you all so special?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're not unique, but we definitely are a special city. That's for sure. We're about a little over 300,000 people. We're trending towards being a majority person of color city, and we're a majority renter city now as well.
Oh,
That's when we think about kind of those demographic indicators, they really come to play when we talk about our CX solutions and our actual way to engage our constituents. Because historically, predominantly it's white single family homeowners that have access to government agency. And so helping to shift away from that is really important, and making sure that we're being representative of the folks that we're working to serve here is important. But we're also the capital. So we've got a really interesting array of agencies and operating in our city, lots of different services, lots of different neighboring associate or neighboring, governments that also interact with us and play a part in the lives of our constituents.
Mary, anything you want to add to that?
No, he covered it, especially that Minneapolis is not the capital. St. Paul is the capital.
And it's amazing how many people don't get that. I am a Wisconsinite by birth, and so I neighboring states. There's a lot to love up there, except for all that snow. There's a reason I moved away. But we're going to cover what snow does to the city, and certainly was it what it does to a customer experience. So we'll get to that in a bit, I imagine. But your mayor has a policy of radical hospitality. And I really want to dive into that because that's such a fascinating term. So explain to me what that means, and then how does it impact customer experience?
Absolutely. It's the kind of short answer is meeting people where they are. We want to ensure that we're able to engage the folks that are in our city who want to access service, who need the services that are available from our government, from a lot of our neighboring governments. But we want to do it in a way that enables them to kind of come in whatever fashion they're comfortable, able to, ready to come to the government in that capacity. Historically, it's been an uphill battle to kind of address that, and that's why it's kind of the primary vision of our government for our customer engagement or our constituent engagement is to really just work on that way that we're getting out of the lanes of delivering services because that's what we do. But moving into that, we're supporting our constituents, we're supporting our community, and that the reorienting ourselves so that the services that we do and the things that we deliver on a daily basis, the purpose of them is to help the people in our city owning businesses, moving through our city, whatever their capacity is. But making sure that they've got access to it and they're supported by the functions of our government.
All right, there are two key things in what you just said. One, it's that customer experience is not a job, it is a purpose.
Mhm.
And transitioning people from that mentality of I'm just here to answer questions to I'm here to help. That is such a radical difference in approaching customer experience. And then the second thing is meeting people where they are. And that's certainly something that we all talk about, regardless of what business we're in, right? And it makes a difference in the channels that we choose. It makes a difference in the technology that we implement. And so kudos to you all for approaching customer service, customer experience, and how you want to help your constituents in that way. It's such a powerful message. So let's hit on a few of those. I can't imagine that's always how city government was run in St. Paul, or has it been?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, short
Yeah,
answer is
It's really
no.
not even now.
yeah, yeah. It's our vision. It's a it's kind of the goal on the horizon that we can guide our steps by, knowing that we're going to have lots of obstacles that we're going to move around in order to get to that. But it's absolutely just it's that North Star. It's the guiding light to move towards.
And so I expect that's part of what this transformation that you're currently under, you're working towards this radical hospitality. Mary, you have been instrumental in this transformation. Walk us through what does it mean to the city of St. Paul? Like, what are you trying to build?
Well, Drew hit on it in that we're trying to help people get what they need, plain and simple, and wherever that is at. Right now, people scattershot their requests to every phone, email, inbox, carrier pigeon that they can find to try to get help with their issue in the city. And that causes a lot of confusion on the constituents side and on the staff side. So the more that we can streamline that for everyone, the more efficient we're going to be, the happier our employees are going to be, and the happier our constituents are going to be.
So let's talk about then, like, how are you organized? Like, how is the city structured? Where is IT? Where is comms? What's centralized? What's decentralized? And how does that now impact this scattershot approach that you're talking about?
Awesome. So we're federated pretty much. We have 17 different departments. We have some central services that come out of this. IT is one of them, but part of IT that is not centralized is communications. Our departments downstream own their own individual communications. We try and collaborate through some governance models and things like that. But at its core, it's our departments and our teams in the departments that are doing the communications initially with our constituents. Rough estimate from us is there's probably somewhere in the range of 350 to 400 entry points to the city through phones and emails. Um, yeah, and the balancing act comes in because that means people can get access to the subject matter experts that they need. They can reach out and contact the folks in sidewalks pretty quickly, as an example. But it also means that there's a higher bar to know who you got to get to in order to kind of get your solution and get your problem solved. So that's where that federated nature is one of the big reasons why we looked for something that could sit on top, that could fill in the spaces between, that could really just help our teams, even if we don't know who it needs to go to, help connect it within the city so that the constituent the onus isn't on them to say, okay, well, that problem wasn't solved with this person. So what do I do next? Where's my next step? Who do I have to call? How do I figure this out?
And super tactically, where do most people get lost in that process? Mary's
Everywhere.
laughing. She's like,
Yeah,
everywhere.
everywhere. Like Drew said, there's those 300 entry points. If you know that Jerry works in sidewalks, and you can call him directly, and he'll probably send a crew out to look at your sidewalk. But if you haven't lived here, we have a lot of long-standing St. Paul people have lived here forever. But like Drew said, our city is changing, and we
Right.
need to be able to meet people where they're at. If I want to, like Drew and I like to say, we're the resident old millennials on our team, and so we're not going to pick up the phone call and complain. My neighbor is going to, but if I can text the city or I can just shoot something off, it's going to get reported. Otherwise, I'm just going to ignore it. So we really need to both streamline it, but also expand it in a way so that people can get in, but we're going to be able to address it in a centralized way.
So that also requires a bit of PR, doesn't it? Where you now have to re-educate not only your internal teams on what they're going to get in, but how people should be using your services. So
Yeah.
that's a beast all in itself. Is that something you all are responsible for, or are you partnering alongside another team within the city?
Partnering. We we have lots of carrots and not a lot of sticks when we implement technology in our city. So when we're working towards changing our process and engaging our different departments and leveraging their expertise as they kind of go through this, we partner. We expand in the kind of slow steps as we're going out, and we bring. And the benefit there for us is that we bring with all of their tactical business knowledge of who they engage with, what kind of requests they get, where their folks are coming from, and where the people that are coming into them are coming from initially. So it's by nature very collaborative. That means that it is a little slow sometimes, but that
Mhm.
also means that we have immense business expertise that comes in every step of the way.
So
It's
you
also
had
been kind of, oh, I was just
oh,
gonna say it's
please.
been kind of cool when it comes to PR. We really haven't done a lot of external PR.
Mhm.
We've kind of just turned on our forms and our kind of more self-service stuff on the website to ease into it. And within a day of turning those on, we were getting stuff submitted by constituents because that's how they're used to getting stuff into other companies and services that they engage with. So even without the PR, people are finding those channels now.
So you are absolutely then giving people the channel choice that they're looking for because one, it's something that they're accustomed to elsewhere, and two, they know at least where to go
Mhm.
on your website to say this is where I can find help. I
Mhm.
love that. All right, you had mentioned Drew this layer of a technology that could sit on top of all these things that were happening. I think that's Zendesk. Um, Explain when you were looking for a piece of technology, what were those other factors that you needed to bring in, and what was it about Zendesk that you made you go, this is the one that's going to actually work for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So the we knew that we were going to have to land and expand functionally when we were approaching a technology solution. We knew that we were not going to be able to go enterprise right away just because of the nature of our communications. So we wanted a solution that would still be functional and still provide a lot of value, even at a targeted implementation, and would just basically help to grow, help the snowball to roll down the hill as we expanded out to other teams. We also wanted a solution that was not going to be platform dependent on what
Mhm.
we had in the city. So something that we could, like basically from the tech side, had an open API backend is really important to us because we have a lot of individual systems that kind of run the business for our departments. And so having something that would be flexible and extensible to hook up to those things as was appropriate is really important to us. And also just we knew we didn't know a lot about what was in our environment. So something that kind of could sit down and then seep into those cracks and fill into those spaces as it rolled out, as it kind of touched those areas, as our business partners got engaged with it. That was going to be really powerful and really was going to be fundamental to enabling any success for this too.
Caroline has a question, and it is about service vocabulary. And she's curious, did you have a service vocabulary that is both human readable as well as machine readable? So is there that vocabulary that stretches across everything that you're trying to do to help with this design of digital services?
uh, we're moving towards it, and I wish we had it already. But honestly, this helping to helping to fit a tool like Zendesk on top of that, and actually to help drive some of that standardization is one of the big benefits of this. We're helping to mold ourselves internally along with the expectations of our constituents on how they're going to be engaged and what to look for. And that's like leveraging a tool that we're not going to heavily customize. We're not going to change to every individual department's their business needs, but help drive folks towards that tool itself. That's what's really helping us build out that vocabulary, build out some governance, build out some standardization.
I want to get into some of the wins and things, Mary, in a moment. But one last question to you, Drew, because this is also something that Caroline raised: is how do you maintain all that? Then her issue is that it was an amazing to have this vocabulary and this structure to kick everything off, but then no one kept it updated. And
Yeah,
so
100%.
now that becomes outdated. It's no longer, it's no longer really like usable or helpful. So who's going to maintain all this? And I don't think it's going to be you two, or is it? And
Someone.
how do you make sure that it's still current? And where are you getting the inputs from? I know that was a lot of questions.
Yeah, there's a little bit to unpack there, Sarah. No, honestly, we've been fighting stale for a long time. Our city website has a lot of things on it that aren't necessarily fresh, and we've leveraging our internal kind of governance committees as well as our downstream department PIOs has been successful, putting together some standards of how the departments are going to maintain this, as well as driving a little bit of that, like, okay, if something hasn't been touched in 18 months, is it valid? Getting some of that built over top of it is important. But honestly, that's an uphill fight that we've had for years here. And this is just this is kind of another tool that we've had to help drive that within our departments. Because when we have, our departments have amazing communicators in them. They have some folks whose job is built around constituent engagement. And they also have a lot of tactical knowledge from folks who are built around a service or delivering completing an operation, something like that. Jerry and sidewalks, for example. So
Does
when we,
Jerry and sidewalks actually exist?
He
yeah,
does.
and he's great. Um, but so when we kind of try and get that targeted level of expertise out there for folks to interact with, so they know what the plans are for sidewalks in their communities, that sort of stuff. That stuff that's built more from our subject matter expert level as opposed to our communicator level. So really finding ways that we can support our communicators to help enable that like help find that right balance of
Mhm.
detail with like something that isn't going to go out of date in 2 months. That's honestly, that's part of the reason why we tried to bring in Zendesk on this, because working with stpaul.gov or our external facing website is a little bit different and a little bit has a bit more overhead than just like shifting people into a guide or a self-service hub
Right.
on there to actually help folks interact with fresh current content that is a bit more flexible, is a little less formal, is just kind of built around the services or wherever the question that the constituent is coming into, less at the kind of policy or initiative level like we
Oh,
usually drive our public facing website into.
I love what you just said because you're trying to humanize government and you want to put an actual voice and face behind it, like you know, Jerry and sidewalks. But but what you're trying to do is make your digital services feel as human as possible, and
Absolutely.
that's not an easy feat. So Mary, let's talk about the wins.
Yeah,
This is a massive endeavor for the city, and I'm sure not everything has gone beautifully smooth and simple, but what are the things that have worked and why?
absolutely. Well, I went through and tried to look at some of our customer feedback that we've gotten just in the last 4 weeks. So we're at the end of week 4 right now, and to exactly what you just said, I printed it off so I would get it right. She said, "Someone responded!" Exclamation point. And responded with what action would be taken. I thank you for that. It's frustrating to have issues with city services and then get no response. So I thank Chris for the timely intervention and addressing the problem. And that's exactly it. They got a response, one, huge win, and they got a response saying, I hear you. This is the plan for solving your problem. So that's just everything for us. Beyond that, we've gotten in, so we have 4 public works areas that are in Zendesk, and then 3 council offices for our city council. And we've gotten 800 tickets so far
Okay,
across
in
our 4
4 weeks.
channels, and we've solved 725. So that's a 90% solve rate, which is, in general, metrics, we never had any. Everything was anecdotal. I think we get this many emails. I think we get this many phone calls. We send them off. So just straight up having metrics is a huge win for us. And then to have some solid, like, what are people asking about? which areas are getting pinged, how are people getting at us, phone calls, emails, forms, enormous win for us. And then also being able to have just some consistency. One of the other big things for us was that a lot of our stuff is institutional knowledge. You
Right.
know that you can call Jerry. You know that fall sweep for leaves is going to happen approximately these weeks before we get snow. So just having a way that people who are answering the phone calls and the emails can say, we can build out that guide portion to say, here's the questions about answers for billing for garbage. How do you find your hauler? Being able to just empower our customer service folks to have a consistent answer and feeling confident about that, and not just kind of by assimilation through however many years you've worked with the city.
And how are you getting now all these successes out to the rest of the departments in the city who maybe didn't buy into
Yeah,
this crazy idea that you had at the beginning?
it's actually really funny because Drew and I did a road show to lots of different places, say, hey, we love Zendesk, we think it's going to be really great, and a lot of people were like, no thanks, pass. We'll let you try it out, come back to us in a couple years if you figured it out or not. And we haven't really done a lot of pushing ourselves, and they started coming to us. So they've said, hey, I've been hearing about this Zendesk thing. Did we talk about that? We're like, yeah, we did. We talked about this.
And you
Um,
said no.
yeah, and so honestly, it's spreading by word of mouth because we have our full agents working in the system. They're tangentially working with everybody else because it's all about collaboration, getting the problem solved. And they're saying, okay, tell us more now. Can we talk about this again? We've got the mayor's office, we've got huge other departments, other areas within public works that are really coming to us and wanting to learn more.
Catherine has a question of, does the city of St. Paul have a 311 service? And does that feed into this?
No, I could take that. We do have a central. We have a central call center that lives within one of our departments. That's the closest thing we have to initial access point, but we don't really have 311. And because we didn't have we get a lot of calls into that call center. We get a lot of calls out of that call center. And because we just don't know, we don't have a way to gauge what's happening outside of that single phone number, where those entry points are. That's a lot of the driver behind bringing on a tool that was kind of flexible and could meet our departments where they were able to engage, at least initially too, just so we can build that metrics, get that sense of what's happening, learn what we don't know about how we're communicating with our constituents, and then better support at least, even if we don't have a single entry point, but at least support a common experience.
Did you have a city that you modeled your approach after, or do you think that what you're doing is pretty novel?
I mean, like I said, we're special, but we're not unique.
Yeah.
I'm sure, our approach to this has been much more so about driving the transparency than it has been kind of following any individual model. So to say that we haven't modeled after any specific agency, but we've just kind of taken and leaned into what we know we need to do to get that transparency, and what we know, like the areas that we are aware that we just don't know what's happening, so we can at least bring some light into those spots to help form our project a little bit more.
So you took those CX best practices that you knew about, you'd heard about, you wanted to build, and then you also pulled up all the gaps that you were aware of within your CX experience and said, all
Mhm.
right, like this, we know we've got some holes here. We know we have some gray areas here. We've got to figure out something to bring those two together.
Yeah, and we're clear with our internal departments too about what one of the gaps we weren't going to be able to address right away. We've
Oh,
got one of our biggest gaps is our dependence on English as a primary language for folks to access the city. Our city government is very representative of our constituency. We have Native Hmong, Native Somali speakers in our government, but we don't know who they are, where they are, and we don't engage them
hmm.
often as kind of part of our CX experience. That's more like if somebody happens to be able to speak that language in that team, so we can get them onto the call. So being able to help identify where those gaps are, be clear with our departments what we can do right now, and then also starting to build that roadmap to say, with engagement, with buy-in, with support, these are the places we can go to. And one of those places we can go to is being able to pull, having taking a call from somebody who their primary language or their desired language to engage with you on is Spanish, and finding somebody that can help them support it, who, even if they're not necessarily in your team or in your department, they're city staff members. So they're coming with that baked in knowledge of what it means to work in a government agency, what it means to work for the city of St. Paul, and then transitioning that over to helping to support the constituents so that they don't have to use a less desirable languages for them.
Now, how far out does that roadmap go?
Oh, I mean, that's a North Star roadmap. We'll keep taking steps onto it, and eventually Mary and I will retire. No.
All right, Mary. So you talked about a little the resistance, but what advice do you have for organizations or city governments who are fighting a bit of that uphill battle and are hearing no? What advice do you have to get the higher ups or the powers that be to see that this is something worth investing in?
Absolutely. I actually start before the powers that be, in that investing the time at the very beginning in understanding the needs of your team and what those pain points are. There were two things that I really focused on at the very start, is that I needed to fully understand the needs of my team and the pain points that they experience. So what do they have to do and what gets in the way of getting that done? And then also fully understanding Zendesk. Um, because I needed to be the one to explain that. We had a great supportive team with our Zendesk partners, but I needed to be the one to say to the garbage team, to my sidewalks team, okay, I know your business and
Hmm.
I've learned enough about Zendesk that I can say this is going to work for you and how it's going to work for you. And that took a lot of time and a lot of investment. And then finding those key partners. So Susan is one of my sponsors in Public Works, and she's been around for a long time, experienced tons of different things, and she was one of my biggest challengers. She's not high on technology. She knows every roadblock that could ever exist and loves challenging me with them. And so I made it my personal goal to get Susan on board. And with that focus, we were able to make sure that Zendesk was actually going to work for us. We didn't want to force it, but realize how it was going to work for us and then teach Susan to be comfortable in the system. And as a result, she's one of my biggest champions. And so she's able to go to other partner organizations or to her boss in Public Works and say, yes, I know this is going to work for me. I know they're here with my challenges. And that is the way that we really made it, not to convince, but to prove that it was going to be something that's going to be powerful for us.
So know your audience, internal and external, become a subject matter expert and find those challengers and turn them into sponsors and have them become your champions.
Exactly.
That is great advice for all of us, probably on any project
Really, honestly.
that we're trying to undergo. So thank you for that. In our last couple of minutes, what's next in 2022? This has been a pretty monumental year, I would say, for the city of St. Paul and the work that you're doing. So, what's next?
More steps. We built this project around the idea that we weren't gonna solve for the enterprise right away. We wanted to ensure that we were comfortable with the tool as it expanded out, so that we weren't going to incur additional costs that we weren't needing or weren't using as before we were moving on further or before we were able to engage folks. So really, for us in Zendesk, it's both taking from our departments and seeing where we can engage them in Zendesk and driving them into that. And it's also leveraging the tool and the capabilities that we now have that we even aren't using to help really set better governance, set better goals around how to engage our constituency.
Well, that is it for today. I want to thank you, Mary. Thank you, Drew. And thank you, Jerry, in Sidewalks. I can't wait to meet you someday because you clearly memorable. And so thank you for sharing your expertise, and thank you to everyone for sharing a moment with us. You can give us feedback by clicking on the provide feedback button at the top of the screen or check the chat for a short survey. And then please join us on December 16th when we chat with the CMO of Trustpilot on the next CX Moment. Until then, please be safe, be helpful, have a great holiday, and we'll chat again soon. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, folks.